you hear the Academy of Arts and Sciences. We are scientists. Ask any scientist. Failure is 99% of the pursuit. You will fail 99%, but there's information to be gleaned. This sort of goes back to the notes thing. There's information to be gleaned in failure because you only have to succeed once. Once you succeed at your experiment, you're not really doing the experiment again because you know what it is that works. Then you're on to the next thing. So embrace that failure, embrace that challenge, and pepper the town. It's about finding the person who digs what it is that you're doing. And you never know where you're going to find that person.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. I'm Perri Nemiroff, Senior Producer with Collider. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists, beginning with Thad Luckinbill. Hello, Thad.
How's it going?
It is going very well because we have an A-plus group with us today that also includes Trace Lysette. Hello. And now we've got Reid Scott with us. And now I get to introduce Max Thieriot.
How's it going?
And finally, rounding out our panel today is Ashley Williams.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm putting you all to the test with my first question because it's a group question, and I know that can be a challenge on Zoom interviews. So for each and every one of you, can you tell me about the moment when you first realized when you needed to be an actor and a producer in order to carve out the most creatively fulfilling path forward for yourself in this wild business?
Being an actor, or really like any job in this industry, right? It's just it's all about the art and expressing yourself and also just challenging yourself. And I think, as we continue to build stories, whether you're portraying someone else's material or whatever that is, I think for me, it was just always about finding that next thing, that next challenge, and pushing myself. And how do you do that, right? Like, is it through directing? Is it through writing? Is it through acting? And I don't know. I just finally, I think for me, I was always interested in writing and building worlds and creating characters. And I was a little timid and shy about approaching it, but really just that challenge is kind of what I was excited to be faced with.
Before anyone else jumps in, I'll follow up on that. You just said you were timid and shy about jumping into it. What was it that gave you the confidence that you could actually do it and become a producer as well?
I think other actors that I was surrounded by. We have a really amazing group of people who we all get to work with, who are very supportive and help not only push us on screen, but push us behind the camera too. And I think that was something that was really big for me. Obviously my family is really supportive, but I had some actors I was working with at the time that were, a huge and integral part of me doing this and pursuing it, and just saying, hey, you got to believe in yourself, and you got to take that step and, make that leap and go for it. And so I think having folks like that who believed in me more in the time than I believed in myself.
All right. Who's next up here? I'm going to call someone out.
I'll jump in. Sure. I'll jump in. I started off as a writer and director, or at least that's what I was sort of intending to do. I went to film school, so I studied to be a writer and director. And I got into acting because I really wanted to know what it was that I was going to be asking of my actors. And I figured, who am I to sort of ask someone to push themselves and challenge themselves in a certain way that I haven't experienced. And I fell in love with acting through just trying to push myself to understand that side of it. And then as I kind of progressed, like in my early years as an actor in New York, I realized, wow, this is an incredibly difficult art form in a way that I hadn't anticipated, in that you can't do it by yourself. You just can't. A musician can go home and write music. A sculptor can sculpt, a painter can paint, an architect can draft, what have you, a dancer can dance. But as an actor, and it's one of the things that makes it special, is you need other people. You need a director, you need, if you're on camera, you need the camera crew, you need the art department. And that's what I love about it, is all these artists working together. But I realized it's like, wow, as an actor, since I can't do this on my own and I want to feel creatively fulfilled in my life, how can I be pushing myself forward at all times? And that came back to writing. So I've always written, even if it was stuff that I knew would never see the light of day. I would write character studies, little pieces for myself. It was just a way, it's like, well, this is the way that I can get as close to acting on my own as I can. And, every once in a while, maybe I'd write a monologue or a little scene and I'd get it up on its feet for some friends and tell me, what do you think? Or shoot a little short or something like that. And that's really what kind of got the wheels turning. I was like, wow, I think maybe there's a way to actually put some things together completely on my own, which is ultimately, for me anyway, the most satisfying, is to really sort of foster an idea of, from seed to tree, that kind of thing. And I think now we're all seeing that the industry, people for years have been talking about the industry is changing, and it is always going to change. It's never going to level off into one thing. That's what's beautiful about it. But it's changed in such a way now that I would venture that we have to take that next step as an actor. We need to create our own content. I know, and I look at my fellow panelists here, and you guys have had like incredible success taking something from from seed to tree, and that doesn't always happen. But I think at least getting those juices flowing and keeping those gears grinding, it helps you stay dialed in as an actor. So maybe it's not always about the end game of actually getting something produced, but I will submit that it will make you a better actor, and it'll start maybe you down a path of directing, which I challenge all actors to sort of try that, man. Put yourself in those shoes and blow your fucking mind in that way. Take on that responsibility and have those sleepless nights. But yeah, keep pushing.
I love the idea of having an understanding of all different jobs on a film set. I feel like that winds up, no matter what your focus is, making your work better when you have a better understanding of what it takes for everyone else to get their jobs done.
I agree. I totally agree.
All right, I'm going around my screen. Ashley, I'll come to you next.
Yeah. I mean, just piggybacking on what you just said, it's, I started off as a child actor, very much in the humble position of, I was like 11 and assumed that everyone around me, knew exactly what they were doing, which they did. And then I would say maybe 10 years ago or so, I remember being on a set and realizing that I had been on sets for far longer and with far more experience than most of the crew. And that was kind of a turning point for me. And at the time, I was actually marrying a producer that was like right when we got married, was about 10 years ago. And I had been watching him work for 10 years here, 5 years there to try to get a project made. And I thought, I could never do independent film production because it's just so hard to get something actually made. But what I realized was that due to the access that I had from being on sets for so many years, I had the ear of more people in power. So then I also, I basically so I work at the Hallmark channel. And I started to make a little game of trying to figure out how to subvert and get my own ideas within that form, which became just really fun. And they loved it. So I started saying, hey, I got an idea. And then I'd come in and act out the entire movie in their office, which was a little crazy, but they just loved it. So they started saying yes. And then from there, writing. I started directing, directed a short, got into Sundance. It was so exciting. The world started saying yes. But it was having that access that without that, without being an actor first, I don't know how I would have done it,
I'm not going to forget the idea of you acting out an entire movie. Like, you should release that as a bonus feature or something.
Well, nobody should see that. It's longer than the actual movie is me acting out the movie.
We'll leave it at that. Okay. I'm going counterclockwise. It seems, Trace, you are up next on my screen.
Hi, I don't know if I could pinpoint the actual moment, but I think it started happening around season 2 of Transparent. I think I booked an NBC pilot with Sylvia Horta, who did Ugly Betty, and that didn't go, and so that was just really tragic. And I knew that the opportunities for trans people were just so far and few between that kind of just didn't have a choice but to start writing and thinking about how to kind of spearhead projects myself. And there's been a few that I've pitched and developed and they don't go anywhere. And then there's others that just kind of happened or fell into my lap. And I think I would rather just be an actress, but I don't know. I guess there is something beautiful about having a say, some say so and some control. And I don't think it is something that I wanted initially, but I think I've grown to kind of love it a little bit.
I will follow up on something you just said, because that's something a lot of people experience in this industry, whether it's as a producer or in any position where you want to make something happen and it doesn't. And you need to have that faith in yourself and continue forging forward in the face of so much negativity. So what is the key for that for you? How do you keep forging forward even when you get some no's?
I commiserate with my friends. I just understand that it's part of the journey. Some people are a slow boil. Some people are, it just happens quicker, or, maybe they've got different connections. I don't know. For me, it seems to be a slower boil, and I'm okay with that. I understand it. I've wrapped my head around it. And I try to celebrate the small wins. I try to laugh at the bullshit. I try to network across and not always up. And I just hold on to my people, because I think I would go crazy if I didn't. So
very important thing to throw out there. All right, Thad, you're last up. What you got for us in this first question?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about it because it's sort of a twofold answer. But the first part for me was when I moved out from Oklahoma, from the Midwest. I moved out right after college, and I had an internship with a producer, as a guy my dad knew, unpaid. Spent a year, busting my ass, learning the ropes of that. But at night, I was studying acting, because I always, for me, that was always the goal, was to produce and to act. I never had any intention of doing just one single version of that. So, I will say the first 10 years of me being out here, my career was primarily acting. And that's just the way it worked out. You have to kind of go with what comes your way. And I think, that being said, I never stopped optioning books. I never stopped looking. In fact, ironically, 20 years later, the very first thing I ever optioned is knock on wood, I'm not going to jinx it, but I think it's actually going to get made. So it's a really full circle for me. But, I think, like I said, the first 10 years was mostly acting. The second, the later 10 years was probably mostly producing. And with a little bit of acting, and then lately it's kind of switched back to where I'm doing maybe 50-50, which is a great place to be. I always loved acting. It's probably my first love, but producing is very rewarding. It's kind of nice to be in control, and I think everybody can probably agree with that. You don't have to necessarily wait for the calls. You don't have to necessarily, quietly or sheepishly give your opinion on something. You're actually in the mix and you're helping mold something from start to finish. Like you said, seed to tree. It's a pretty rewarding place to be, I think, as a producer.
That I'll give you this audience question because you just brought up optioning a book. So
Great.
this comes from
Great.
one of our viewers right now. After securing the option agreement for a set of books to be adapted into a TV series and creating a pitch deck, what are choices for the next step the actor/producer must take?
Well, I mean, look, those steps are great. Those are the steps, right? And at that point, it's just luck. I'll be honest with you. It's finding material that matches up with a studio or production company, or a streamer. In fact, as an example, this show that has taken 20 years, it's sort of my baby. It's taken 20 years, and we've produced a lot of things over the years. But this has always been something I think out of pride I wanted to work out. And it started off as a film, and we went everywhere with it and got, a lot of yeses, and then those yeses turned to no's and whatever. Or it just didn't, you couldn't find the right actor attached to it that made sense to, invest that much money into a film. But we converted it. We went and said, well, we're going to do a limited series. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, we've had it as a limited series ready to go. And, we finally have a home for it. I think it's going to work out really well. So hopefully, I can't say what it is, not that anybody cares, but I don't, it's just, I think you have to adapt. So that's the second, to answer your question. I think you just need to be able to, roll with the punches, and maybe your film's a TV show, I think that's part of it.
It's in my blood to care. It's taking everything in me right now not to ask for more information.
No, I'm making it sound really exciting. It's probably not, but to me it is. So
I look forward to hearing more about it. All right, Max, I'm going to circle back your way now. So you've got Fire Country over on CBS/Paramount Plus, and also SEAL Team. You're a producer on one, but not the other. So how has wearing the additional hat on Fire Country changed your day-to-day on the production compared to SEAL Team?
Oh man, it's definitely busier. I mean, I'm sure every other actor producer here can attest to that. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't more work. But I think like some of my fellow peers here said, it's just the feeling that you get of accomplishment, and just that how rewarding it is, because it's something that is, coming from you. And I think as an actor, we have these characters that we spend all this time with, and you spend building them and living out their life and watching their arc, and it's like that, but you're doing it on such a larger scale. And so the work is greater, but the reward is far greater as well. And then, I think also, just to sort of comment on what I think a few of you were saying before, the biggest thing is, like nobody bats 1,000, and that's just life. But that doesn't mean that you should be afraid to step up to the plate and keep swinging, because that's really what it's all about. It's believing in yourself and taking risks and just not, I know it sounds like that cliche thing, but not giving up. I mean, you really have to have faith in yourself and believe in that wholeheartedly, because, in the beginning, it is hard, right? It's those first meetings are tough, and trying to get those first yeses are hard. But if you continue to work hard, I do believe that people can accomplish anything if they really set their minds to it and they really put forward the work. And, back to doing both, it's like, I don't know, a vineyard manager who I worked with for many years, he started off pruning vineyards, and before he knew it, he owned vineyards, and then he built a winery, And he'd still be out there in the vineyard, like getting his hands dirty. And I said, Ulysses, why you don't have to do this anymore? You have a crew of a couple hundred guys. What are you doing? And he said, Max, he's like, when you work hard, the food tastes a lot better. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, you're 100% right. And I think that translates to anything. But, you know, for me, it's all fulfilling, right? It's hard, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I like being busy. I like hard work, and like all these folks here, like there's gonna be no's along the way, and all of a sudden you get that first yes, and things start changing, and you just kind of have to stay true to yourself and what you believe in, and just continue to stay busy, put in the work.
Hard work's paying off real well. Fire Country season 2 is on the way.
It's busy, but it's good. Yeah.
Keep it busy. Trace, I'm going to come back your way now with a 2-part question, because Monica marks your very first executive producer credit. And also, like, you are phenomenal in that film. I need to just point that out as well. When you get the opportunity to be a lead and an EP on a project like that, what's one thing that made you stop and think, if I'm also a producer, I can influence the project overall for the better? But then also, as someone taking on a very challenging role, what's something about the producer credit that lets you do something for yourself that you really needed that you wouldn't have been able to if you weren't a multi-hyphenate on this?
Well, I guess the advantage is just, like I said before, like being able to speak up a little bit more. You know, as an actor, you sometimes just want to show up and do your job and get it, you know, whatever the text is, you just want to deliver it how they want it and, you know, make them happy. Whereas this, I had started giving notes early on. I mean, 6-7 years ago, right after I auditioned for it. Even before I had the gig, you know, me and the director were just chatting about life and the script. And I don't necessarily recommend that people do that, but I went out, you know, I kind of gave it freely, and it was appreciated. And, you know, I kept auditioning for them over and over. And eventually we just decided to go at it. But I think, well, I had produced on other things before, like a docuseries, and I had pitched another series, and I had written another series that I also, you know, was attached to as a producer. So I had my producer bearings, but I think being really in it, like day to day, 14, 15, 16-hour days, acting, and then also just having the opportunity to say more about how I felt. I think in some ways it helps the project overall. In some ways as an actor though, I don't know that helps. I think it's a little easier to be removed from some of that stuff, because it is another job. But I don't know that Monica would have turned out the way that it did if we didn't have my voice and another trans woman's voice, Drew Gregory, who was the director's assistant on set every day. You know, I was able to just bounce things off of her and kind of go to bat for certain things. And in the end, it was all appreciated. So yeah, it was really a beautiful process, but it was definitely extra. It was extra work.
More appreciation.
All right, I don't know if I veered off your question or not, or if that answered it. But.
No, it definitely does. And there's more appreciation for all that hard work to come, because ever since Venice, that buzz and that praise has been building up and up and up. And I love to see it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Ashley, we have a lot of people in the audience who are very, very curious about what it's like working over at Hallmark. They are absolutely crushing it with original movies right now. So what would you say is something about the Hallmark movie making process that is very specific to them that you really appreciate and makes you want to make that, you know, your home in a sense, at least?
Yeah. Well, one thing, you know, as I mentioned earlier, my husband is a is an indie film producer, and he's made everything from $200,000 movies to $120 million movies. But I really like to work. And he spends a lot of time trying to get things made. He does get things made. But what I think is so incredible about Hallmark is that they make 100 movies a year. So, there is so much opportunity to be creative, and also the audience really responds. Like, it's the #1 cable channel. So knowing that the audience is watching, knowing that, you're getting to actually have your stuff made and produced is really exciting. And then, getting to do that as a producer, getting to sort of like work my way up the ranks a little bit has been really exciting. And one of the reasons it's been exciting is because I was able to start this women's directing program at Hallmark. We make so many movies a year, and to be honest, most of them are directed by men. So, that didn't make sense to me. And I started kind of raising my hand about it many years ago. And then I sort of came up with a formal pitch, but I had their ears, because I was an active member of the community there. And I was able to get everybody on board. And now we've got, we're starting this shadow program. And we're about to give our first female mentee her directorial debut. So that's been really exciting. Just it's such a sheer volume business that there's such an opportunity in so many other regards.
Make her mark sounds like one of the coolest things in this industry right now. It makes me so happy that you're doing that. Just to add to how you got that off the ground, you said it was an idea you had for a good while. What made right now the time for it actually to get the go ahead?
Good question. The answer is I was trying to look for that opportunity for myself as well. So, I was on a soap opera when I was a kid, and they've got these like big broadcast cameras on soaps. It's like 3 or 4 of them. And they're the kind of thing that like they kind of float. And I was dying to hold one, like get my hands on one and sort of like, operate. And so I went up to this camera guy one day and I was like, can I get back there? And which is actually probably like a union problem, but I asked anyway. I was like 14. And he said, why don't you stick to wearing your bikini? And there was truly this moment in my head where I went, yeah, you know what? Like, it's really kind of like a boys thing, isn't it? And then a couple of years ago, as I mentioned, I started to realize that I knew more about production than a lot of the crew, et cetera. And I was like, yeah, I'm a director. This is crazy. That's what I should be doing. And then I started knocking on every door all over town. And, I got a lot of, just because you've been in the kitchen doesn't mean you can cook, which I actually understand, because at the time, a lot of women were being given opportunities before they were properly trained, and then they were not put into a position to succeed. So that's where I started to get the idea, this idea of a I call it reciprocal shadow, right? So our mentee shadows a mentor for all of prep, all of shooting, and for as much of post as is possible, usually virtual. And then they switch, and that mentor becomes her creative producer while she has her directorial debut. So we are making sure that she's set up for success. We employ our women, we pay them to shadow. And to be honest, it was the kind of training program that I wanted to be allowed into. And I kept applying, and I've applied to every single, directing program, and I am rejected just as much as everybody else is. So I was like, no, let's figure this out, and so far it's going really well, knock on wood.
I love it so much. I can't wait to hear more about that in the future. Reid, you're up again. I'm especially excited to ask you this question because you've worked with so many incredible producers over the years, and multi-hyphenates in terms of director, writer, showrunner. We can name drop Amy Sherman Palladino, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Armando Iannucci, so many incredible people. Of all of the producers, multi-hyphenates that you've worked with, who would you say influenced what your goals are now as a producer the most?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. I don't know that I could boil it down to just one. I really think it's an amalgamation of all of them, because none of them do it the same way. like Armando, for example, he's a mad scientist. He's a total mad scientist. I could never work the way that Armando does. Because it's just it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. But the passion that he brings to everything he does, that is absolutely something that I, strive to emulate. It's tough, in this business, there's no answer anyone can give anyone else on how to do it. It's completely unique, and that's one of the things it can be very frustrating. It can be very demoralizing at times, but it can also, I think that one of the common things that we keep coming back to is it can be very satisfying. So you try to draw inspiration. Maybe you try to model yourself a little bit, but it's not going to go the way that the person you're emulating's career went. It's a terrible sentence, but it's going to be your way. It's going to go the way that you do it. You try to take inspiration where you can. For me, echoing something that Ashley said, I like to work, and so I've looked for opportunities, where I can fit in. And if something sort of sparks my interest, well, that's the thing that I'm going to go do. It's never really been, I'm not at the level yet, certainly, to sort of play the kind of chess game of like, well, this gets me that, and this will get me that, and this will get me that, maybe someday, who knows? But for me, you try to stay open to what the universe is sending you. And when the right thing comes along, it tends to go smoother than you would think when it's the right thing. Which is not to say if something's a challenge, it's the wrong thing. I love what Thad was saying. Something 20 years in the making, like that is fucking cool. To stick with something that long and see it through, just that alone, that's a win. Just that something can kind of keep gestating and keep pushing forward like that over such a long period of time. I've got 2 projects I've been working on with my friends it's been 15 years, and you get a lot of no's along the way. And you get a lot of notes along the way. A lot of them are bad notes. Of them are good notes. You try to implement the ones you can. At least, think about the bad ones. It's like, well, I'm getting this note. Like, why am I getting this note? No, that's bullshit. I don't believe that note. Throw it out. But it does change. It changes a lot. I'm working on a project right now that we're finalizing some things here. So again, a little too early to talk about it, but it'll be a series. But it started off as a feature. Well, I'll back up. It's going to be a comedy series that started off as a very serious, hard-boiled horror feature. So you have no idea where these things are going to go. We just love the idea, me and my partners on this thing. It's like, well, what if we just recalibrate it? Ooh, that unlocks something. And then what if we mix it back this way? Oh, that's pretty interesting too. Which is one of the things I like about television is that you've got a longer runway to sort of experiment with where things can go. But yeah, I think the number one thing, and Trace, you said this too, is, stay open. This film that I just produced, it was like a year and a half ago now. Who Invited Charlie? It started off, one of my very good friends who I work with on a bunch of stuff. He wrote this script and asked me to read it and said, what do you think? And I said, I think this is fun. I think we should do this. And it was during the pandemic. So we put it together through friends who we knew were dying to do something. And so we reached out to Adam Pally, we reached out to Jordana Brewster. And once we had these sort of actors in place, the money comes in, and it was not a lot of money. I'll tell you that. We definitely didn't do it for a paycheck. We did it because we wanted to work, and it would be fun to work with these people. And when I tell you this was as indie as it gets, I was running catering one day, because our caterer got sick, and it was like, shit, crew's got to eat. All right, great. I'm not shooting today. Give me the keys to the truck. I'm going to go into town and I'm going to buy, 400 sandwiches and keep everything going. And, that's what you do. If you love it, you grind it. And that is something that all of the people that you mentioned, they all do. They work incredibly hard. But it's got to be genuine. You got to be doing it because you love it. If you stop loving it, find something else. And the people that stick around, it's a lot like poker. I use a lot of like poker analogies. The longer you stay at the table, the better you're going to play. So find a way to stay there, find a way to keep that love going, find a way to stay inspired, and stay in the game as long as you can, because you never know when that one thing is going to come around where you find that article, you find that book, you find that story. It doesn't have to be an IP. You come up with the idea. Who knows? We are all changing. We are, as artists, we are our own product, and we are constantly evolving. So the way you feel about something now, what you bring to a project now is not what you're going to bring to it in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. So just stay in it. I hate when I see people drop out of frustration. And my wife's a writer, and I've seen her have a lot of frustration over the years, you know, and she's been doing this for a long time. And it's a lot of sort of like, script, sell the script, never sees the light of day. Sell the script, never sees the light of day. And finally now it's starting to happen. Her voice has changed enough to where it's suiting the market, and vice versa. So keep plugging away.
I want to follow up on something you said, and then I got a couple of good audience questions here. You had brought up the idea of being able to receive and process notes, and that's whether we're talking about your work as actors or producers, that's always something that fascinates me, getting notes, going through test screenings, you name it, just something where you're getting feedback on your original vision. So do any of you have specific examples of times when you've wrestled with whether or not to actually use feedback you've gotten or to stick to your gut?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the whole game. I mean, one thing I find is that depending on what the note is, usually whoever I'm working with it's what we say, like, it's like their arm hurts, but they don't know if it's broken or not. Like, they don't know what the solution is, but something's broken, right? Or something's hurting, something's not working, right? But they might be trying to tell me what the solution is, but their solution's not working, but there is a problem. So if I can I think it's called like the note behind the note or something like that. If I can figure out what that is, that's usually the answer for me. Because I like the idea that there's a million different solutions for something that's not working. But sometimes I don't like it when they tell me what the solution is.
Yeah, I one of my favorite processes in the filmmaking business is testing in front of an audience. I absolutely love testing movies. I love sitting on the back row and watching an audience take in this thing that you've been working on for years. And it's pretty eye-opening because you instantly see what works and what doesn't. I'm not 100% sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but this is where my mind went. But you instantly see, like, for example, we were producers on La La Land, and when I went, it sounds like now you go, oh, La La Land, it was such an easy movie to be a part of. It really wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a no-brainer. It was original music. There were other casting choices initially that were attached to it. And so when we got involved with it, it was a pretty big gamble, financially, and as well as, commitment wise. But I remember going to the first test screening in Pasadena and sitting in the back and watching the audience watch the movie. And I instantly knew, I was like, this movie is going to work. This is because they are spooning this up. It was just beautiful to watch. So it's like, I love feedback in any way, whether I'm an actor, I love when the director gives me feedback, whether I'm a producer, I love when the audience gives me feedback, or even the actors give you feedback, or, the director has an opinion, a writer, who you name it, the caterer, Reid, making sandwiches, give us your opinion, because it counts, it matters. And it makes a better film, I think, or a better TV show. I think the worst thing you can do is not listen to people in this business, because everybody's got an opinion, and a lot of times it makes a better project, or gives you a better result.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I totally agree, and even just to kind of go back to what Reid had said to start, about being a director and kind of diving into acting to learn sort of the mind of the actor. I think as an actor, there's so much you can learn from being on set. And just by staying there and asking questions and watching how everybody else works and watching how the writers work and watching how when you're in a scene as an actor, you know, the tone that you're trying to get in a specific scene might not be hitting, and how a writer might make an adjustment in that moment. And all of those things are, to me, like the greatest school for learning how to produce and make your own stuff, is because you're watching it all unfold and you get to sit there and be an audience member to that entire process. And so I encourage everyone to be there and to stay there and to learn and try and soak up as much as you possibly can, because it really is, there's so much valuable stuff that you can learn what to do and what not to do. And for me, that was like a really eye-opening experience. And, you know, and not even just from a producing standpoint, directing, like you can watch directors on how they work and how they interact with actors and sort of just the whole process. Like there really is, like you have a free ticket to watching a production, and you might not see some of the stuff behind the scenes, but you're getting to see how it all comes together and what's working and what isn't working. And it sort of works as well with the note process. It's like, you know, while you might have your opinion on how something should be done, you get to see like what's hitting, what doesn't hit, what, you know, what the audience is believing, and what they're emotional over, and all those things. And those things can all be really useful tools when you're working on your own material, because you can take all of that. You can take all that information you've learned and go, okay, and try and apply it to your project.
How about for you, Trace? Any examples of a time when you had a note, maybe you needed to consider it, but then had to decide whether or not that note was worth applying?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even, there's too many. What I will say to the minorities that are maybe watching, just speaking as a trans woman, sometimes there are certain cultural things that, like, you know, if you're pitching to cis executives that maybe don't know the life, they may not know your journey, they may not know what you've been through, or certain cultural cues, or the importance of something in a scene. Sometimes I think you have to just back up, you know, do your best to take the note and know that, like, for example, if you have to water something down or ABC it for them, maybe it's something you can circle back to later when they're a little bit more caught up with whatever story you're telling. And until we see the landscape of executives and studio heads change a little bit, become a little more diverse, I think that's just something that comes with it. And it can be frustrating to have people from outside of your walk of life tell you about your life, or your people, or your community. But so I think in that instance, sometimes you need to know when something, identify that that's what that is. And, you know, maybe some people will call that a bad note or whatever. It is what it is. You got to find a way around it. You got to find a way to roll with it. It's going to be frustrating. Maybe you need to switch up. Maybe you need to take that away from that network and go somewhere else, or a different production company, or get someone to champion you that people will listen to. I think sometimes I struggle with people just listening to what I have to say, or what is important to my community, or why this certain thing is integral to this story or this character. And that is extra labor, and it can be hard. So I would say, just know that that's coming. If you're a minority in this business, know that that's coming, and try to staff your team with people so that you can share the load.
Speaking of that, and also my hopes, Trace, of seeing you amplify your voice even more in this industry. This is a little bit of a long question that needs a little bit of setup here, but I was watching an interview you had done after Venice, and I think you were asked what it meant to you to have Monica play at that particular festival, and you had said you were grateful, but then also that experience had brought up a number of questions for you, and one of them was, will I get to a place in life where I feel safe enough to start a production company and tell other people's stories? Now that the movie does have distribution, it's getting more and more love from everyone who's seeing it. Has your answer to that question changed from Venice to now?
Not yet. I'm still waiting to see, how this does. I'm hopeful. It's getting great. It's getting great, buzz, but I think we just have to wait and see, how it does in New York and LA. Will it get a wider release? And when will that translate into some kind of clout for me and my friends who write and want to produce really great marginalized stories? So I'm hopeful, but I don't know that I have the answer yet. So
I believe it is coming. I really mean that. Here is a question from the audience. Anyone can feel free to jump in on this one. It's something that I'm always curious about. How important is it to physically be in Hollywood to get a project off the ground?
There's a lot of different ways to answer that. I think it depends on where you are in your career when you're trying to launch that project. I don't think that it's completely necessary, but I think that if you don't have some connections to or avenues to take that project and you're not in Los Angeles, then it can be hard, right? I mean, it's kind of the hub for a lot of stuff starting out. Clearly nowadays it's not really the hub for everything getting filmed, but I think that having relationships in Hollywood are important because inevitably those are the people that you're going to have to go to who get these things done from the go. And if you're not at that position yet, you either have to have a connection to that world or know that world somehow. I mean, that's my 2 cents. I think if you're still what you say, Oklahoma or Ohio, Thad, or
Oklahoma, yeah.
And if you're still living in Oklahoma and you've never spent time in Hollywood, I can imagine it's probably tough to try and pick up a phone and say, "Hey, can you read my script? I live on a farm outside of Norman, and here it is. I want to make a movie." I mean that's not easy, but I think if folks are here right now and connected to the industry, they have someone that they could probably reach out to.
But by the way, I love that this forum has allowed me to find my long lost brother here. This is exciting.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
He's the younger, better looking version of me.
Yeah,
but I actually agree with him completely. And I've had this discussion with people over the years. I mean, look, I'll be blunt. If you're Mark Wahlberg and Brad Pitt, you could live anywhere and you can get anything made from anywhere. I think sometimes, I'll just speak for myself, as a producer, it has helped for us to be in town, be able to take the meetings, be able to take lunches, be able to, sit face to face with people. I don't think it's the end all be all, but I do think it helps. And from an as an actor, and like I'm a very plain spoken person. As an actor, I can't tell you how many jobs I've gotten because I ran into this person or this person in LA. I mean, I just did a Paramount Plus TV show for 8 months, which was a really wonderful experience. But looking back at it, I don't think I would have done it had I not been in LA, because I happened to run into somebody and we started talking about it. And then that was sort of the genesis of me being on the show. So I think sometimes my opinion is, I think sometimes when you really want to do something, you need to be around those people who are doing it. Whether that's, sports or entertainment, or if you want to do Broadway, well, your best shot's going to go to New York and start, going to coffees and becoming friends with people who are doing what you want to do, and learn from them and talk about things with them, and get ideas and information. Like Max said, in Oklahoma, it would not be something I would all of a sudden, hear too much about what's going on in the entertainment business. But here I hear about it a lot. I can go to the gym and I can hear about it from somebody. It's wild, but that's my opinion.
I agree. I think if I'd stayed in Dayton, Ohio 20 years ago or whatever, instead of going to New York to get actor training and make connections there and then book a job out here, start living out here, I don't know that would have happened for me. And I know it's different now. We're in a Zoom world. We're in a post-pandemic world. So that has shifted a little bit, but I still think, like you were just saying, that like sometimes you just run into people at events or wherever, and it will plant a seed, whether you know it or not. And sometimes that will turn into something. And I think once you get your foot in the door and you get a little established, I'm not sure to what level, but then maybe you can live somewhere else. I don't think I've hit that plateau yet, but I'm looking forward to that, where I can just go live somewhere, quieter or less LA. But that's how I feel about it.
Ashley, Reid, anything you two want to throw in on that one? We got many more. We can move on to the next one. Here's one that there's probably like a million answers to these particular questions, but it's well worth talking about. Someone wants to know, where do you pitch? How do you find the people to pitch to? Who do you pitch to? Is it other producers?
I mean, I have an agent, and they, for better or for worse, tend to be the gatekeeper, at least in the beginning. And I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing, because I've had some projects before that, when I was younger, I sort of got talked out of pursuing by an agent, sort of like, I'm not really sure this is fully baked. Or, again, art is subjective. So sometimes it's about having that right person in the right position in your life, in your career, that sees what you see. And then hopefully, if they do, they know people who will see it the same way. But it doesn't always work like that. Again, there's no formula for it. I had a project with an agent, and I've been with the same agency for, almost 20 years now. Who didn't get a project of mine that I loved. Like, I was like, oh my God, isn't this great? This is the greatest thing ever. And they didn't get it. And that's fine. And then they retired, and some new fresh blood came in. And to their credit, they're sort of like, well, what did my predecessor pass on? Or like, what are our clients, what's on the shelf? And he literally read something that I wrote 10 years ago and loved it. And it hadn't changed. It hadn't changed at all. And they instantly know this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. This is where we're going to go with this thing. All of a sudden, it gave it this new life. But it's very difficult, speaking to actors right now who are in this position of trying to sort of multitask in this way. It's hard to get it straight to a producer. Like Thad's inbox is going to blow up at the end of this Zoom, and he'll have like 30 new projects by the end of the week. So, so he's Thad Luckinbill at hotmail.com.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get it straight to a producer unless you know that producer. There is a system in Hollywood. I use Hollywood, loosely just for the industry at large. But there's a progression. You get it to your agent. Your agent hopefully knows some producers or some production companies or some streamers or whoever who would be interested in that material. Then you go there and you try to pitch them. And then here's what's going to happen. They're going to say, great, what else you got? And then you move on and you find another one. but there's no formula. There's no formula. If there was a formula, and if the people on this panel knew this formula, we would be running the world. But it isn't. It's art and sciences, and I think this is something I love talking about, because and sometimes really with this stuff, it's just about how you recalibrate your thinking. It doesn't change what you're going to do; it just recalibrates how you sort of slot your mind into it. You hear the Academy of Arts and Sciences. We are scientists. Ask any scientist. Failure is 99% of the pursuit. You will fail 99%, but there's information to be gleaned. This sort of goes back to the notes thing. There's information to be gleaned in failure, because you only have to succeed once. Once you succeed at your experiment, you're not really doing the experiment again, because you know what it is that works. Then you're on to the next thing. So embrace that failure, embrace that challenge, and pepper the town. It's about finding the person who digs what it is that you're doing. And you never know where you're going to find that person. That's my long-winded answer.
Totally.
Very well said.
Totally. I think you can kind of gauge too fairly quickly how hard that climb is going to be for you based on your initial reaction from people when you sort of pitch someone this idea, whether it's a friend or, colleague or your agent. And, when whatever that idea is that you come with, I think you can, you can tell relatively quick, okay, this one's going to be harder to get people to understand, because I can tell that this person is telling me they like it as my friend, but they're not giving me, I don't see them getting really excited about it instantly. And, and that doesn't mean that it's not going to work or it won't work or it's not good. It just means, like you said, that maybe they don't understand it. And then sometimes there's other ideas or concepts or projects or scripts that you've worked on that you'll take, and instantly you can see that people are like very excited and motivated about it. And those ones might be easier to get in the door, at least, and open these conversations. And, and that sort of varies, I think, project to project.
I have to let you all go in a minute, but before I do, just because we've name dropped a couple of titles, I want to make sure everyone out there knows where they can watch some of your work. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of these locations, but Thad, for you, I have Devotion currently streaming on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Trace, you've got Monica in theaters on May 12th. Reid, Who Invited Charlie, is available for purchase and rental on digital platforms. Everyone can check that out anywhere you get your movies and shows. Max Fire Country is, of course, closing out its first season on CBS and available to stream on Paramount Plus. And then Ashley, the Sister Swap movies are available on Hallmark Movies now. I think I got everything right there.
Good.
Thank you all so much for your time today. On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you for sharing your experiences, your process, and your craft with your fellow performers. Congratulations on everything you accomplished.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.